requesting Vikram to introduce Rashmi to this for this session. Rashmi, welcome to Sri Yoga platform. And there are quite a few people, and more will join. And go ahead, Vikram. You can introduce her. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Shrikant Dada, for asking me to introduce Rashmi Kulkarni here. I should say Dr. Rashmi Kulkarni. She has a PhD from Ohio State in molecular genetics. So she knows way many more things than I do. She and I have been working together as volunteers on a platform called Ahar Kranti. Ahar Kranti is a program that is being run by Global Indian Scientists and Technocrats. GIST. It's a worldwide organization. So I happen to be on the advisory board of the US portion of that, or a volunteer for the GIST US or USA. On that, I ran into Rashmi. She's based in Qatar normally because she's married to an airline pilot. So wherever he goes, she goes. So she has lived after being married. She has lived in Singapore for some time, and she's also lived. She's currently living in Qatar. So we are fortunate she is here on a vacation with her family, and she has agreed to do this session for us. She has studied the gut microbiome, which is actually more powerful than we are in our own body. Most of us don't understand this. So Rashmi is going to explain to us all about it. She has many accomplishments. Most of all, she is so passionate about what she does. Whatever she is going to tell us is going to penetrate our mind and heart. So over to you, Rashmi. Glad to have you here.
Thank you so much, Vikramji. I'm very happy to be in front of such a wonderful audience. And as always, I love to share whatever I know about the gut microbiome. So whenever everyone is ready, I can start sharing my screen.
Yeah. So Rashmi, I will make you co-host in case. Can you? Okay, you can share it. Okay.
Yes, yes, I'm able to share it. So is it visible?
Yeah.
Okay. So I just want to start off by saying something about how human we are. So we are very proud of being human, and we think we are the most superior creatures on earth. And almost everybody is extremely proud of that. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about who we really are, about our microbiome, about nutrition, about what we eat, and how all of that relates to our long-term health. When we look at who we really are, we think of ourselves, if we look on the left image here, the visible organs is what we think we are made of. That's what we call as humans. However, if we look at the second image, there are so many invisible microorganisms that reside inside and on our bodies. So, what makes us a complete human on the right here, as shown in this image, is the microorganisms and our organs that form the complete human that we are. So, what is a microbiome? We keep talking about it and hearing about it these days, that oh, the microbiome is so important. The microbiome is a collective genome or the collective genetic material of all of the microorganisms that reside in our bodies. So they can be bacteria, viruses, protozoa, or fungi. So these are the four kinds of major kinds of microorganisms that have been very commonly found in our bodies. So their collective genetic material is called a microbiome, and the collection of these organisms is called microbiota. And why are these microorganisms so important in our life? Let's figure out. There are 10 times as many microorganisms that are functioning inside and on our bodies as there are our own cells, which is a huge number. Scientists have sequenced more than 10,000 different species of microorganisms that have been living in the human body. And why is all of this so important? The number 10 times is already huge, But when we look at the unique genes as shown on the bottom left, there are 100 times more genes as compared to our own that belong to the microorganisms. And they outnumber the human genes by so many times. And this means that they are functioning 100 times more than we are in our bodies. So if we look at the genetic material or the DNA of humans, we are not that different from each other. Our DNA is 99.99% identical. But when we see how different we are from each other, it's these microorganisms that make us very different. That is 80 to 90% different from other humans. That is because their genetic material is always at play. So by looking at the cell count, we are actually only 10% human. 90% of our cells belong to other organisms. But if we look at the function, we are only 1% human. 99% of the functions are done by these microorganisms or their genes. So that's a scary number. Where does this microbiome come from? What is the source if they outnumber us so many times? Guys, don't lock the door. Come on, open it. So if we look at this image, the womb is normally sterile. But what is important here, if we look on the left side, is that the baby receives metabolites from the mother's microbiome all the time. And if the mother's microbiome is healthy, these metabolites can really help the fetus grow in a normal way. And when the baby is born via normal or vaginal delivery, the baby actually gets seeded with the mother's microbiome. That is the first time it encounters these microorganisms, and that is the first time the baby is seeded with the microorganisms. So babies that are born by C-section do not receive these, they get the skin microbiome instead. And doctors have started actually seeding them with the mother's microbiome. So this really helps later immune system development, and it reduces the risk of obesity and a lot of chronic diseases later on. One additional thing, if we look at the bottom notes, the not only the mode of delivery but the feeding practices are also extremely important. Babies that are breastfed also receive very good microbiome from their mother versus babies who are formula fed. And all of these are very critical in shaping the gut microbiome very early during life. So there are age dependent changes in the microbiome. We keep accumulating, as we see on the bottom panel here. According to age, we keep accumulating these microorganisms from the food we eat, from whatever we drink, from the external environment, and outdoor exposure. So these keep on accumulating. And during adulthood, the microbiome is very stable and extremely diverse. That's how a normal microbiome should look like, extremely diverse, and that is very healthy. In the elderly, however, the diversity of the microbiome starts decreasing, and this can be a cause of several chronic diseases. So, what does the microbiome actually do? It does a lot in our bodies. If we look on the left side, there are so many functions related to the immune system where the microbial metabolites are functioning in our immune system development. If we look on the right side, they also help in metabolism by helping us with digestion, with calorie storage, with satiety, and they also produce a lot of vitamins that we cannot produce, majority of the B vitamins and vitamin K. They help in nervous system development and other functions such as drug metabolism. They also determine how we metabolize drugs. They help in development of our tissues and organs. So these are very important functions that these microbes are doing for us. This is just a summary of all of the functions, some of the functions that the microorganisms do. They help us in defense by training our immune system against harmful microorganisms. They help in nutrition because we cannot digest our food completely. A lot of it is digested by the microorganisms. And dietary fiber, that is a very important part of it, is not even digested by humans. It's the microbiome that helps us digest the dietary fiber. The microorganisms also help us absorb minerals such as magnesium, calcium, and iron. They also shape our behavior, mood, and a lot of neuronal development. If we look at this image here, it looks quite busy. But what is important here is about 70 to 80% of our immune system is located in our gut. Most people are not aware of this and we do not think of this. This is exactly how our food affects our immune system or our immunity. So if we look at the image here from the left side, we are looking at an embryo developing, and where the pink becomes dark, this is where the baby is born. So the image here shows the development of the intestine. The intestinal cells are growing and developing, and they are exposed to different microorganisms. And these microorganisms are telling the immune system that we are safe, we are friendly, and the ones that are not encountered at that time are recognized by our immune system as foreign or pathogenic. So it's a very important time in our life when the immune system develops and it gets trained by these microorganisms. This cartoon here depicts what the gut microbiome actually does. On the bottom here, it's represented that the microbiome is constantly training our immune system to fight off infections. And the top green microbes shown here are saying that I think we'll struggle to set up a colony here because the microbiome is constantly training the immune system and it's doing its job very well. So just for a fun fact, for a break in between, there are these very dirty surfaces inside our homes that we never think about cleaning. There are some other things that we are obsessively cleaning all the time, but these are some of the things that are shown in these images that are quite dirty. There are 200 times more fecal bacteria on an average cutting board that cuts meat than there are on a toilet seat. That's quite shocking. The dirtiest thing in the house is the kitchen sponge and not the toilet seat. But what we do instead is we keep cleaning other surfaces that are not even dirty, or we don't need to because we need the exposure of those microorganisms. So we use surface disinfectants, antibiotics, antibacterial, everything like hand wash, body wash, antimicrobial toothpaste, antimicrobial wipes, hand sanitizers. Yes, it's important during COVID, but people use it even during other times. Antimicrobial floor cleaners. And what this does, it's driving away the sources of our microbiome. So what do we think should be the reaction? If we look at children who play outdoors all the time, are exposed to all of these germs, whereas if we look at children now who are always indoors looking at their screens, who do you think has a much healthier microbiome? Are these children getting any microbial exposure? So what exactly happens when the microbiome is healthy or unhealthy? Let's look at this image, gut microbiome, health and disease. So this is an intestine here that's represented in the center. That's the place where most of this microbial population resides. So on the left, we can see that it plays a huge role in our immunity by providing an actual physical barrier to the pathogenic microorganisms, and they also train our immune system. They synthesize vitamins that we cannot synthesize, and they help in the absorption of calcium and iron. They also help with metabolism of the food that we eat that would otherwise go undigested. If we look on the right side, unhealthy gut microbiome causes this physical barrier to be lost, and this in turn causes gut inflammation and a leaky gut, which is a cause of majority of chronic diseases. The diseases because of an unhealthy microbiome are seen in individuals, with several chronic diseases, and the signature of these gut bacteria or gut microbiome are very different from individuals without the disease. And the good thing is this can be reversed for majority of the chronic diseases by balancing or recovering the gut microbiome by proper nutrition. So the simple equation is there's a bad gut microbiome, it causes increased inflammation, and that leads to overall poor quality of life, including several chronic diseases. So the gut microbiome actually should be considered as an important organ in our body. Many scientists are now actually petitioning or arguing that this should be classified as an important organ of our body because it's functioning in a much more important way that we never realized before. The gut microbiome in adults can weigh from 1.5 to 2 kilograms, and it is doing so many important things. If we nurture it properly, we can avoid most of the chronic diseases in life. So these are just some of the things, as I mentioned before on the left, in case of disease, when the microbiome is not healthy, we have a lot of synthesis of metabolites that lead to gut inflammation and increased risk of a lot of chronic diseases. Whereas on the right, if we see there are metabolites produced in cases of healthy microbiome that lead to good health. Now let's look at some gut feelings. Are gut feelings real? Most people know what gut feelings are, that sometimes we just feel it, that something might be right or wrong. So the gut microbiome might actually be working, or they might be manipulating our mind. It's true, gut feelings might be real. So the gut is our second brain, because 70% of our peripheral nervous system is also in our gut. And this second brain influences our mood and well-being, and most of our emotions that are influenced by the nerves in our gut. The gut microbes directly communicate by their metabolites with our gut nervous system. So when we say that the gut microbiome is actually manipulating how we think or our mood, what actually happens is that there are signatures of microorganisms that can be correlated with a majority of psychological or psychiatric disorders, as shown on the right. There's something called a psychobiome, which is a microbiome specific to psychiatric disorders. It sounds like a scary term, but there are gut bacterial signatures for majority of these disorders listed on the right. And these bacteria, when transferred to mice that are germ free, that have never seen germs before, the mice also start behaving as if they have this psychiatric disorder. So this can actually be transmitted via the gut bacteria. So the gut bacteria are producing metabolites that are directly affecting our brain, our mood, and our responses. So how is that determined? There is something called a fecal microbiota transfer, which is transferring fecal matter from one individual or one animal to the other to determine, because the fecal matter contains a very good representation of the gut microbiome. So this material is used as shown in image A here. The sample is prepared and tested for any pathogenic organisms, and then it is given to individuals to see if it changes their phenotype, or whatever disease they have, or what any disorder that they have. So this is not a disorder here as shown in the bottom panel, but for in case of obese individuals, the pie chart here shows a very low diversity of the gut microbiome. So when such individuals are given fecal microbiome transfer from a lean person, the lean individual normally has a very high diversity as shown on the right pie chart here of the gut microbiome. And just transferring this fecal microbiome leads to a change from obese to lean phenotype. So this is another representation that shows a fecal microbiome transfer from a lean individual to an obese individual on the right. And when this is done, this experiment has been done several times from lean donors to obese metabolic syndrome patients, or patients who have type 2 diabetes. It improves their insulin sensitivity immediately. If we look at the microbiome and cancer, For example, in breast cancer, there is a different signature of the skin microbiome that is correlated with breast cancer. So that's quite surprising. And also, the response to chemotherapy is very different if the gut microbiome is healthy. So, although this slide is very busy, the take home message here is some patients do not respond to chemotherapy very well, and some patients respond extremely well. And one reason for that is their gut microbiome is helping the patient metabolize the drug very differently. So what doctors are doing now is transferring the fecal microbiome from responders to non-responders, and they in turn become responders and they start responding to the chemotherapy after this transfer, which is very, very encouraging. So what is the importance of microbes in immunity and health? In case of people who follow a traditional diet, as shown on the left side, the traditional Indian diet, if you will, there are many other traditional ancient diets that are extremely diverse and very, very healthy. They contain all the optimum nutrition. That leads to a healthy microbial diversity, as shown below the diet. And this, in turn, has a high level of interaction with the immune system. This leads to a very good health status, as opposed to the industrial diet, which is very low in fiber, as shown in the second panel. It has a lot of processed food. It is non nutritive and has empty calories. And because of this, it causes a very low, it does not allow nurturing of a high microbial diversity. This causes low levels of interaction again with the immune system. And this is the reason for many of the chronic diseases. So, as we see on the right, optimum nutrition will lead to healthy microbes in the gut. This in turn will lead to good immunity, which will lead to good health. And this is a virtuous cycle that keeps going. People who are already in good health tend to choose better nutrition, and they tend to have a healthy microbiome and good immunity. So, what is the future of treatments? If we look at majority of the chronic diseases or even cancers, there are very specific signatures that scientists are now finding that can be correlated with each of these diseases. So the microbiome are represented on the left in any disease state. So the first generation of treatment, as shown on top, is a direct replacement of these microbiome from a healthy person who does not have that particular disease, and this in turn leads to a healthy state. This has been done several times in several diseases, several disorders. The second generation of treatment would be a very precise replacement of these organisms. We do not know yet which of these organisms are responsible for the disease, or which we can use to replace and go back to the healthy state. The third generation would be to use very targeted molecules or metabolites directly from these microorganisms to treat the disease. So, when we say everything about the microbiome, can we correlate what we already know from Ayurveda or the ancient wisdom that we have in India or elsewhere with current science and modern medicine? So this is a wonderful review that I found that described some papers on Ayurveda, and it showed all the organs and the systems that are affected by our microbiome, and they are all of our organs: central nervous system, gastrointestinal, hematological, immune system, cardiovascular, endocrine. And what the microbiome does is, again, it supports ojas or immunity. It helps light agni or the digestive fire, and it helps digest the amma or the toxic material that's undigested. This in turn helps our mind, bodily tissues, and helps digest or remove the metabolic waste. If we look at the circadian rhythm and what Ayurveda says, on the right here is a representation of the Ayurvedic clock. So, according to Ayurveda principles, the morning time is a kapha pradhan kal, wherein the metabolic state is not very active from dawn to about noon. And what is said is that in this time period, we should be eating light because the metabolism is not very active. The afternoon is the time where it's a Pitta Pradhan Kal, or the metabolism is ignited, or the Agni is ignited. This is when we should have our heaviest meal for proper digestion. The evening is the Vata Pradhan Kal, which is where the metabolism is again slowing down. That's when we should have our last meal before dusk, and food should be consumed with respect to the time of the day. So let's look at what current science says. If we look at current science and the microbiome, what happens in the circadian rhythm? If you allow me to explain, this might look a bit complicated, but the crests and troughs here are showing the activity of our brain. So when it's dawn, our brain is active. It starts becoming active, and then it goes down by dusk. And this keeps cycling every day, the activity of our brain. If we look at the gut microbiome, or these colored rods and circles shown on top and bottom, many scientists have shown that the gut microbiome changes over time. The composition is different at dawn, and it changes very significantly by dusk. What this means is that these microorganisms are responding to our circadian rhythm. They have their own circadian rhythm, and they are also responding to our hormones and the food that we eat. So these keep changing over time. So the purple rods shown here are dawn and dusk. So the time between this is when we should be eating most of our food. What happens when we do that is the metabolism is completely in sync with the activity of the brain, and the microorganisms are very suitable to digest or help digest the food that we have eaten. So now the brain, the microorganisms, and the metabolism are completely in sync. We keep doing this over and over again, and everything is in sync. It leads to good health. But what we do now is, because of 24/7 availability of food, and because of the nature of our work, what we do is we eat well after dusk. And the time of our meals, the last meal, is quite late. And that is when the brain is not very active. The microorganisms have already changed, and nothing matches what it should be for the metabolic state. So the metabolism starts going out of sync, because now we have some undigested matter remaining on day one. We keep doing it on day two. We have even more undigested matter and toxic material accumulating in our body. We do this over time. What happens is the gut microbiome is now unrecognizable. There are many pathogenic organisms that can reside in our body, and they are not what they should be. The brain, the metabolic activity, and the microorganisms are completely out of sync. And because of this, there is improper digestion. There's a lot of synthesis of toxic metabolites. This weakens our immunity, because now these pathogenic microorganisms are telling our immune system that, oh, we are safe. So you don't do anything to us. That weakens our immunity. And they also synthesize very harmful metabolites that keep accumulating in our body. And because the food is undigested, we do not get proper nutrition day in and day out. So on day N, this leads to chronic diseases of all kinds, including diabetes, hypertension, several forms of cancer, kidney disease, lung disease, and all kinds of other chronic diseases. Ayurveda also states that seasonal consumption of food is the best for our health, because the metabolic state is very different in each of these seasons. And this is exactly what we see with the gut microbiome. The gut microbiome also keeps cycling according to the seasons, and food should ideally be eaten in that manner. So, if we look at what we know traditionally and what current science shows, they correlate extremely well. The pyramid of health, as Ayurveda tells us, looks something like this. So the bottom three steps here mention that if we want to prevent disease, we should follow the dinacharya and rutucharya, and follow food habits like sattvic food, rajasic, and tamasic food. But when we miss out on doing this, we enter into a zone where there is a change in lifestyle and food habits, and this then goes on to a disease state, and treatment is required, where herbs or plants are used as food, or medicines with herbs are required, or very drastic methods of treatment are required. So Ayurveda aims to maintain the health of a person so that no diseases manifest. So we should ideally be in the bottom three of this pyramid. Ayurveda also aims to cure all diseases, not just treat the symptoms that are caused by poor nutrition. If we look at what a balanced diet should be, we should be ideally getting all of the macronutrients such as good carbohydrates, including fiber, healthy fats, proteins, and all of the micronutrients, including vitamins and minerals. I'll also give a special mention to the spices, because spices are the highlight of Indian cuisine. And they are the star performers that do so many additional things apart from what the macro and micronutrients do. They help our immunity, they help keep our blood sugar low, and they do so many other functions like pain relief and keep our mind and body healthy. So when we get all of these nutrients, our body is able to perform at an optimal level. This is a representation of a rainbow diet that I've shown here. We always hear this, we should be eating a rainbow diet. So why is that important? It's because all of these colored fruits and vegetables contain very different vitamins that we need on a daily basis. Most of these are water soluble and they have to be replenished on a regular basis. And when we do that, when we have a very colorful diet that includes sources of all of these vitamins, the effect on our health is a reduction in risk of majority of chronic diseases, as shown on the right. If we look at a representation of the old food pyramid where carbs were at the bottom, now we are hearing more about fruits and vegetables should be at the bottom. If we look at a food pyramid and we ask somebody, how healthy do you think you eat? Most people tend to say that, oh, we are very healthy eaters. So if we look at what people actually eat, on the left side, we see that people are eating very low fiber, refined flour, white rice, and white bread, when in fact we should be eating much more wild rice, high fiber bread, and carbs that are very high in fiber. And this is important because refined grain, as we see on the right, is stripped of the bran layer, which has all of the fiber. It is also stripped of the germ that contains all the vitamins and phytochemicals and healthy fats. So when we are eating all of these refined carbs, we are depriving ourselves of the actual nutrients and we are getting only empty calories. So if we look at fruits and vegetables, the idea people have is that fruit juices, smoothies, fried vegetables are, they fall into the category of healthy eating, but that's not the healthy way of eating. Whole fruits, vegetables, minimally processed are the healthiest. The same for dairy and fish. This is the idea of healthy eating for most people, whereas it should be more pure products, fermented products, and healthier ways of cooking fish. The same thing goes for meat, fried, smoked meat that most people consume versus again healthier ways of cooking. And all of these are constantly leading to increased risks of chronic diseases. If we look at sugars and fats, again, this is the people's idea of eating sugars and fats, very unhealthy oils. Instead, we look at, the healthy sources like nuts, fish, seeds, olive oil, and sources of sugar like honey, dates. These are the healthy versions that we should ideally be consuming. So I'll give a special mention to sugar and fruit juices. I keep hearing a lot about people drinking juice or giving their children juice because they think it's coming from a fruit. It's very healthy. What they do not know is when juice is made, the fiber is gone. What we now have is just more and more sugar. Because if we eat a fruit, we tend to eat one or two fruits. But if a juice, if we drink juice, it normally has much more fruit processed in a processed form. So this image shows the amount of sugar in one glass of fruit juice for each of these fruits. So what happens to the microbiome when we consume something like this? On the left side here, it's shown that when we consume a medium orange, we are getting about 10 to 13 grams of sugar from it, a very high amount of fiber. That's why the sugar is digested extremely slowly and released in a very controlled manner. We are getting vitamins. It's also making us full, feel satiated. There's a slow, controlled rise in blood sugar. When we drink an orange juice, a 16 ounce orange juice glass, that gives us 48 grams of sugar. It is much more than a medium orange. It hardly has any fiber. It has vitamins, but it does not keep us full for very long. And it causes a rapid sugar spike and fall. The same with orange soda. It doesn't have any nutrition, it only gives us sugar. And diet orange soda may also alter how the body reacts to sugar. So, if we look at the mechanism of all of this, what happens when we are ingesting this food? On the left side, when we consume whole fruits, vegetables, whole grains, things that are low in fat and high in fiber, all of this is we are chewing this food. This is interacting with the entire digestive system. It is interacting with all of the microorganisms and all of our digestive juices in a way where all the nutrients are optimally received in our body. But if we look on the right side, fruit juice, overcooked pureed vegetables, processed refined grains, or a high fat diet, all of this is passing through our digestive system without much absorption of nutrients, and it causes more harm to the microorganisms and to our bodies, leading to chronic disease. So the industrial lifestyle, which is very low in fiber and very high in empty calories, has changed the makeup of our microbiome. This is just a cartoon representation of the same. So what is important here is westernization or industrialization of our diet, or an oversimplification is causing a loss of gut microbiome diversity. And that is a very serious concern. Preserving these microbiome diversity is as important as preserving species on Earth. We have co-evolved with our microorganisms, with our microbiome, and we have to take care of that. It is very important for our own survival. So if we look at the consequences of eating processed food that we see, it's because of convenience that people eat all of these processed food. There are a lot of preservatives in it, and they are processed to increase the shelf life. So what it does is when shelf life is increased, these preservatives are added to prevent microbial growth. And what that does is they also kill the microorganisms in our gut. The processed food is also very low nutritive value, empty calories. It causes obesity and overweight without actual growth and development. It causes a lot of things like cognitive decline, anxiety, depression, worsening of appetite, digestion. Because once we get used to all of these processed food, we cannot even digest natural food that's not processed. It increases the risk of several chronic diseases, leads to overall poor quality of life and poor gut health. So there are several ways to avoid processed food. It's not easy, but it can be done in a slow, gradual manner. If we drink enough water, if we change our diet very gradually to a healthy one, instead of shocking our bodies with a sudden change, and we can time our cravings. We usually know what time we are likely to crave something unhealthy and try to eat something healthy before that. We can plan our meals with nutritious food. There can be mindful eating without distraction. Eating more protein can also help. When people are extremely hungry, they tend to make more poor choices about nutrition. If we manage to reduce stress in our life and get enough sleep, we are more likely to choose better food. We are absolutely what we eat. Our appearance, mood, how we feel, how we react, how we even make decisions is very dependent on what we eat. We eat bad, we look bad, and we always feel bad. And this is a vicious cycle that keeps going. Whereas on the other side, a good balanced diet leads to very good mental and physical health and well being. When we eat well, we eat good, we look good, and we feel good about ourselves, and we make much better decisions in life. So, when I say we should gradually change what we eat to better eating habits, why do I say that? Because we are not dining alone. What we crave is majorly by the microorganisms that reside in our gut. They are the ones making us crave all of this unhealthy food because we have accumulated these microorganisms over time. It's a history that we have built over life, and it is difficult for to make them stop craving this. That's why it is very important to do it very gradually in a stepwise manner so that it's sustainable. I just want to give a special mention to traditional Indian ancient thalis that had a wide diversity of food items, very different fruits and vegetables, very colorful thalis, and a special mention to all of the chutneys and raitas, which have so many micronutrients that we require on a daily basis. We have moved away from the traditional Indian complex thalis with a lot of spices and oversimplified our diet to one pot meals or a very Western diet. And this has led to a loss of microbial diversity. So we should actually be going back to our traditional roots because we have a very rich culture and heritage. So our long-term health, our nutrition is a calculated risk that we take on our long-term health. We can decide how much preservatives we want to eat, how much of nutritious food we want to eat, because we can decide how it is going to affect our long-term health. It is in our hands. We have the choice. So let's do the math. So, because I'm giving this talk with such a wonderful audience, exercise along with nutrition, these are the two wings that we need for the flight to good health. If we manage to achieve both of these, it is the optimum thing we can do for good health. So, with that, I would like to end the talk. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I can take.
Very much, Rashmi. And the forum is open. If anyone wants to ask question, you can unmute yourself and ask question. So one question I had is, are there tests that check how good are your microbiomes?
Yes. So that's a wonderful question. There are many companies now that offer very simple tests. So they just need like a stool sample that is to be sent to the company, and they actually sequence the complete microbiome, and they give recommendations according to what chronic diseases the person is likely to develop later on in life. They make recommendations to change the diet. There are several companies that are doing that in India as well as in the US.
You have, can you just list one or two? This,
Yes, there is one company in India called Lucine Bio. There are several in the US. I can send him later.
Okay.
I can look at him. But I know that Lucine Bio is doing this in India.
I see.
If you can send, if you can send the ones in the USA, that will really help us.
Yes,
Thank you
definitely.
very much.
I can send.
Very wonderful lecture.
One question.
Yes.
Is it covered by health insurance, this kind of test?
I am not sure it's covered, but the tests normally cost. I don't think they're that expensive. I don't live here, so I don't know if they are covered by insurance here.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
You mentioned about the fruit and the fruit juice.
Yes.
So do you mean to say that if I eat an orange
Yes.
and if I take the juice right there, so is
Yes.
there a difference between taking a fresh juice at home and eating a orange?
Yes, there is a huge difference because when we make juice, For a glass of juice, you would need 4 oranges. I think 4 to 5 oranges, depending on the size. If you're eating an orange, you would tend to eat 1 or 2. And when we make juice, we are filtering out the fiber. When it's the process of juicing destroys the fiber. And when the fiber is destroyed, the sugar becomes very easily available to our gut. And this causes a rapid rise in blood sugar, and it can lead to a severe insulin response. So it's not advisable, even if it's fresh juice, it doesn't change anything.
Oh, so the rise in the sugar is because of more number of oranges we are using in making a juice.
It's because of not the because it's the number of oranges plus the removal of fiber that is causing the damage. Once the fiber is gone, the sugar is very easily available to our digestive system.
Okay.
It's because of the fiber that the sugar is very slowly released, and it is taken up by our body in a very healthy manner when we eat whole fruits or vegetables. But when we juice that thing, the fiber is reduced significantly.
क्वेश्चन विचार
काय विचारू?
की कोलन
Thank you.
आणि मायक्रोबचं काही रिलेशन आहे कोलन कॅन्सर वगैरे असं?
One
हॅलो,
conversation.
मी आनंद गर्दे.
Yes, namaskar.
नमस्कार. मला प्रश्न असा आहे की raw vegetable juice, is that good or bad for the gut?
I would say that eating raw vegetables directly is any day much better than juicing, because juicing will remove the fiber to a large extent. So that's not the healthiest way of consuming anything.
No, this is not a substitute for eating raw vegetables.
Yes,
But if you want to eat sufficient quantity of the vegetable to
yes,
get all the vitamins,
yes,
the amount of fiber associated with it, with the
yes.
raw fiber, it will give you a stomach ache. So this is not a substitute for
Okay,
taking vegetables
got it.
otherwise,
okay.
but this is a substitute for getting sufficient vitamins. So my question is, if you keep the balance of eating other vegetables with fiber and everything,
Yes,
can the raw vegetable juice be additionally beneficial?
it can be beneficial. It depends on the vegetable. If it does not cause a rise in sugar, it needs to be checked, because vegetables will also have sugar, not as much as fruits do, but it can be used to supplement for vitamins. If it is not replacing vegetables,
Thank
it
you.
should be better.
I would like to ask a question about probiotics. There are so
Okay.
many probiotics on the market.
Yes.
Are they any useful? Should one take them or not?
The subject about probiotics has been extremely controversial. Probiotics by themselves are very good. They should be taken. So for probiotics, it is ideal to eat fermented foods rather than taking probiotic supplements, I think. Because I've read
And how about
because the probiotics by themselves are very good, but I've read recent reports about antibiotic resistance being transferred by these probiotics, because they are bacteria after all, and that's a dangerous thing. So instead of going for supplements like this, I would rather eat food that is fermented, like yogurt or pickles or sauerkraut or something more traditional. There are so many fermented foods available in the Indian cuisine
Yes.
that would give probiotics.
So आपण जे dahi, in Marathi diet we have plenty of use for dahi and tak, etc.
Yes.
That is far better.
मायक्रोब्स आणि काय मायक्रोब्स आणि हे
कोलन कॅन्सर
आणि कोलन कॅन्सर आणि काय
मायक्रोब्स इज एनी रिलेशन
hello, मी
बिटवीन द
नम्रता बोलतोय.
So please
Hello.
one person
तुला
at
मी वाटतंय कसं नाही पटत
one
नसेल
person at a time, please. So Namrata, go ahead.
I have a question regarding intermittent fasting. How does that help, or is it helpful, or is it harmful for the microbe?
Okay, so there is a very interesting question, and I get this question a lot. So intermittent fasting, there are many different types of intermittent fasting. Some are more severe, but the ones that are not very severe are actually very similar to what Ayurveda is telling us to do. That you eat in a certain time period, 12 hours between dawn and dusk, and you stop eating after that, which is a maybe 12-hour period. So that can be very helpful. But there are extreme intermediate fasting
Basically,
people
I'm
do.
talking about like Dikshit diet or like 2 meals in a day, just 2 meals, not anything else other than just 2 meals.
It really depends on the history, the microbes that we have accumulated, and our health condition. Because 2 meals might not be enough to get the optimum nutrition that we need. So it really depends on the health condition of each person.
Okay, thank you.
Have you written any books on the subject, or can you
No.
recommend any books?
I have not written any books, but there was one book that I read that I think very highly of, and it's called. Sorry, I can send you the link. I don't remember the name right
Yeah.
now.
So if you send the link or the information, I will.
Yes, I can send the link.
That will be very nice. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Yeah, Shri, I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Medha.
I'm Medha from Oregon, and I have a question regarding colon cancer and its relationship to microbes.
Yes.
Is there a
So-
relation link between the two?
Yes, there is. There is a. It is a very. The gut microbiome signature is again present very specifically in colon cancers, and that has been shown to be very responsive to the formation of colon cancer. It is involved in the formation of colon cancer and also the response to treatment. So it's very important.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there a relationship between the consuming caffeine in tea and coffee and the gut biome, the microbiome? Does consuming caffeine decrease the the bacteria in the gut?
Caffeine itself probably has some effect, but the antioxidants in coffee and tea are extremely healthy, and moderate consumption of tea and coffee is actually beneficial for the gut.
Okay, thank you.
Rashmi, my name is Govind Modi.
Namaskar.
Namaskar. I have a little longer question.
Yes.
I know that probably in last 20 or 25 years, people have become more aware about the natural food or
Yes.
Uncooked food, its
Yes.
effects and all that.
Yes.
But still, as of today,
Yes.
if you see the all over the world, most of the population, I will say about 70, 80 or even 90% of the population still are hung on cooked food as well as the processed food. So people are literate, people know science.
Yes.
Still, they are not changing. You're talking about whatever you said today, you're talking probably about 10 to 15 or 20% population at the most, not more than that. So what is the reason for that, and when do you think that awareness will happen, and why there is not much more money or research being done, and there is a drastic changes taking place in these habits of the human beings on this planet?
So what a wonderful question, Govindji. I just want to answer this I do outreach programs for children. I started doing these because I realized this, that I am in this field. And if you ask me if I'm a very healthy eater, I am a healthy eater, but by no means it's as healthy as it's supposed to be. And it's not just knowing it, the knowledge is not enough. We are constantly bombarded with commercials, and constantly we have this exposure of things that are extremely unhealthy. There are these corporations that are funding things that are extremely unhealthy. For example, I'm staying in a hotel here. If I go and have breakfast, there is absolutely nothing healthy available. So this, and if you look at what children are watching now, they watch YouTube videos on their iPads. The commercials that are there in the breaks are for of McDonald's, of KFC. They have all of these junk food commercials in between. Then you have advertisements like a toothpaste commercial, for example, which says that you can eat as many sweets as you want, and then if you brush your teeth with an antimicrobial toothpaste, you are fine. All of these are extremely misleading. All the governments are allowing commercials like these to run because that's where the economy is. So what we need to do is increase awareness in people that we already have an unhealthy microbiome. It's already craving unhealthy food. So even if we want, even if we know that this is not nutritious, it is extremely difficult to change this. So what I am trying to do is, I started these outreach programs sometime last year. I also joined this Global Indian Scientists and Technocrats Forum, and we have launched Ahar Kranti, which is a nutrition revolution for people in India. And the launch was on 13th of April this year. We are making modules for nutrition for all ages, all stages of life, and we have volunteers who will go to each and every individual in India and make sure that people have the right information. We will also encourage them to come up with solutions, or we will provide them with solutions as to how to get optimum nutrition. That, oh, if I'm working, I don't have any time, but how do I still manage to give a nutritious meal to my family? So there are so many things that we are doing collectively. A lot can be done, and increasing awareness is the first step to bringing about this change. It will take several years, but it has to be done.
I don't want to negate you on anything because
Okay.
it's a very valuable information you provided. But
Yes.
but let me tell you the vision or the practicability. The practicability is there will be more and more food industry. Like even
Yes.
if you see now, 20 years ago, Indian food was never processed and sent to US.
Yes.
Now you see everything in 2 minutes you can make dal or rice and everything. So that means what is happening is the food industry will progress and more kind of this kind of food is going to be in the market, whether we like it or not. So the process we are going through, or you just told, is a very slow process. It might take 100, 200, I don't know how many, 500 years. But as of today, and if you have a vision for next 50 years or something like that, I'll tell you that the attempts or efforts to make awareness is definitely excellent efforts. But as the businesses go, more and more kind of processed food is going to be in market, more industries are going to be there, and that is going to be more flourished to the coming generation than what you or I or somebody else is trying to do about the natural food and all that. Is that correct?
Yes, that excellent, very valid point. And we know we are against something huge. It's a very uphill task. So it looks impossible to do. But we are starting at very grassroots levels. We are going to, teach children and encourage them to start eating healthy by gamification, storification activities that the children will enjoy. And once we get the younger generation involved in this, they will go on to their families and start this movement of healthy eating. So that is our first target, and we are also targeting everybody else, the general population. But if we manage to transform the nutrition for students, that will be the major first step in bringing about this change. And it's the demand that people create that will generate a change in whatever the industry produces. If there is no demand, it's not going to be useful to have these supplies. So I know we will encounter resistance. We are extremely motivated, and we will keep hitting at it with all our efforts.
Do you have any slides or any?
Kudos to you, and I'm going
Can
to
we-
join your Ahar Kranti. Okay.
That's great.
So do you have any information which may be more appropriate for kids to understand?
Yes, so that's an excellent question. We have a complete module that we are going to launch on Guru Purnima on 24th July. So that's a tribute or Guru Dakshina to the teachers of India. And we have already made that module. It is finalized. So we are doing a video format, and it will be available in very different forms, in a film, in a cartoon way that students understand. It will be gamified. There will be many things done to the module. So yes, it is available.
We have a very good group of kids that attend the yoga classes or teach yoga classes also.
Yes.
It will be very helpful to tell them about this particular effort.
Yes. So we have made these modules tailored to the teachers, so that the teachers can teach their students in a way that they understand very well, because different groups of students respond very differently to instructions from their own teachers. So we are giving this freedom. I mean, the teachers will be free to develop it in a way that their students understand best.
Yes. One question I have is, you're saying that my eating habits may be controlled more by the my microbiome
Yes.
rather than myself, and how do I change that?
Yes, that's why it's very important, because they outnumber us so much, that if we start bombarding ourselves with healthy food, we will encounter so much resistance that we will go back to more unhealthy habits. It is very easy to for that to happen, and it keeps happening for many people. That's why it's very important to do it in a very gradual, stepwise way, that you include more colorful fruits and vegetables, do something very simple for yourself, start exercising more slowly, one whatever 10 minutes at a time or something. So if it's done in a gradual way, it can change. It takes a few months depending on how healthy or unhealthy the microbiome is, but it can be done gradually.
I have something to say. This is
Yes.
so in terms of awareness, and this is something very good. Gradually, steadily, we can make a difference. When I came to US, I noticed there was no organic food available. It doesn't have to be organic, but I see that if you go to any organic food, they make sprouts.
Yes.
They have plenty of fruits,
Yes.
plenty of good health, and it's a transformation.
Yes.
It's happening.
Yes.
If we don't, I always believe that if we don't try for it, then it's zero. The
Yes.
outcome is zero. If we try, then 50-50 chances.
Yes.
So yeah, speaking of awareness, I really love it.
Yes.
And I see the transformation. Have you seen how many people are vegan these days?
Yes.
They don't, yeah, it's just happening. We don't have
Yes.
to be frustrated about that, but it's
Yes.
happening
Yes,
actually.
there is
Yeah.
some change happening, and when there are no
Yes.
preservatives, and when people start seeing this change, the movement will keep. It will keep gathering momentum, and it will go further and further.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Rashmi,
you.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm Tinkle from Maryland, and I
Okay.
was wondering, is digestive enzyme good for you? Because I see many times it helps me with my digestion, heavy stomach and feelings like that. When digestive enzyme release all this uncomfort, heavy stomach.
Yes.
So
So
are they
yeah,
good
it
for
might be
you,
very
like
helpful.
regularly?
Yes. If that is something that's lacking maybe in the microbiome or in the digestion itself, so the enzymes, digestive enzymes are required to digest food. Majority of them also come from the gut microbiome. So if they are not producing enough of the digestive enzymes, there might be supplementation required. But it is possible to balance the gut microbiome, and there are services who do that kind of consultation to figure out how it can be adjusted with diet. So
I have
that
a question.
the digestive enzymes won't be required anymore if the diet is adjusted.
So who do you go to? Which type of specialist to
The
find out?
sequencing of the microbiome, those are the people who give all of these recommendations. The companies who do microbiome sequencing,
All
they
right.
normally give all of these dietary recommendations.
All right. Thank you so much, Rasmiji.
Welcome.
It was wonderful.
Niru, you have some question? Go ahead.
Yes, Rashmiji, excellent presentation.
Thank you.
And I am being microbiologist also,
Okay.
not the gut microbiologist. But so my question to you is, we are cleaning all the surfaces using lot of chemicals. What is your idea about, like, we are doing excessive cleaning? How means we are
Yes.
not eliminating the good microbes by doing that, because back in India we never do any cleaning like this, what stringent cleaning, what and because of COVID it is more now. So where do we draw the line?
Excellent question. So one thing I wanted to add is a friend of mine, a Chinese friend of mine who lives in Singapore, recently posted that his son has very severe eczema, and it's so severe that he cannot even take a shower. He starts screaming when water touches his skin. So I immediately told him that I think his skin microbiome needs to be adjusted because he has no exposure to germs. Singapore is a very, very, very clean country. And this is a very common condition in Singapore. I also recently heard from a friend in London that when her son was born, he had so severe eczema that he could not even be dressed. So, guess what they did? They took him to India, and in 2 years he was completely fine, because people do not live in sterile environments, they don't clean obsessively in India, and there is so much more exposure of all of these diverse microorganisms that all of these conditions are avoidable.
Yeah, here I hear a lot of about babies are having eczema. So
Yes, because they don't have any exposure to the microorganisms, and these are the ones that are training our immune system on the skin, on our gut. I mean, I only mentioned the gut, but all the organs have a different specific microbiome that is doing all of these functions. So if we don't let that develop, we are going to have all of these diseases. That's why we have such a huge incidence, such a huge rise in all of the chronic diseases in India, in all the westernized countries. And people in India tend to follow all of the Western practices, and even the rural population has started copying the urban population, and it's going in the opposite direction that we should be.
yeah, because raising in a kid in India, we used to wander in the fields and everything.
Yes.
Sometimes we wash our hands or not, or just
Yes.
grabbing the fruit from the tree and
Yes,
eating,
yes.
just like that.
Yes, absolutely.
So
That's the
that-
healthiest way of eating.
Right.
That's how we should live our life.
Yeah, but thank you very much.
Thank
Very
you.
excellent presentation.
Thank you so much.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
Thank you
Yes.
very much for the great presentation,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
I have a question. I have
Yes.
vitamin B12 deficiency,
Okay.
and for which actually traditionally I come from Andhra Pradesh, and we take fermented rice, like we
Yes.
cook the rice at
Yes,
night
yes.
and have it in the morning, mixing curd and some onions or pomegranates, raisins. So is that okay? Or
Yes,
actually
actually,
Ayurveda is
yes.
no to fermented stuff. What is your opinion?
Yes, so a majority of B vitamins, including B12, which a lot of people are deficient for, is can be made by the gut microbiome if it is healthy. If there we have those bacteria that can make all of these vitamins, most of the B vitamins and vitamin K are made by these microorganisms. So if we keep it healthy, if we eat all of the fermented traditional foods, I don't see any reason why we should have all of these deficiencies. So excellent point.
So those fermented rice is okay, right?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I don't know all the specifics of the food for each of the regions, but our traditional food has a lot more to offer than we can think of.
Naina or Dilip,
Thank you.
you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question, Rashmi. You
Yes.
mentioned about the, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
You mentioned about the rainbow diet. I'm from California, and
Okay.
you mentioned about the rainbow diet. And something you are coming up with the small kids, for them to improve their diet.
Yes.
Are you going to have something specific like that we in the US can, can introduce all this to our grandkids? I have I have 3 grandkids.
Yes.
So I'm just concerned about, introducing all this from the young age.
Yes, so excellent question. So this is for everybody. Whoever wants to get involved, we will provide the information. We have all of these modules. We even have specific modules. So when I say module, each of the slide has a lot more background information behind it. There's a separate huge module behind each of the slides for this. So when we talk about solutions for how to introduce healthy foods for children, we have a complete module separately for that, how to do that in a slow loving way, and how will it be easy for parents to do that. We have all of that information, and
Okay.
if you need that, we will be glad to provide it through Ahar Kranti.
So keep us
Okay, thank you.
in your distribution, Rashmi. So anyway we can help you, or just introduce the concepts and modules to more people from in this group,
Yes.
we would like to do that.
Yes, yes. We would be very happy to do that. The Ahar Kranti team can do that at a very convenient time for all of us.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Namaskar, Shrikant. Can I address the point I
Yeah.
think Neera Ben had made regarding the excessive cleaning, right? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Because see, that is at the interface of what we are discussing right now and environmental science and engineering, which is my professional background. You see, I'm going to take this discussion a bit into the spiritual realm also. The reason we are so scared of microbes is because we have been bombarded since our childhood to assume that all microbes are bad. That is far from the truth. In fact, the friendly microbes outnumber the unfriendly microbes by several times. I would say almost 99% of the bacteria we have in our gut or in our body are actually helpful. Now, how do we maintain that helpful microbiota? We maintain that by making sure that we live in sync with them. The way we maintain them in sync is by living in sync with nature's laws. And Rashmi gave a beautiful graph of how and when we should eat and how our digestive fire is corresponding with the place of the sun in the sky. If we maintain like that, if we eat only during the daytime hours and at night we never eat. Of course, we cannot really help if somebody is working in night shifts. So these are, I would say, exceptions. But for most of us who are capable of eating during the day, I think we should eat during the day. And between meals, we should fast. See, our human body throughout the ages has been evolved or has evolved as famine or feast. Okay. More recently, in the recent past, we have more access to food. And in fact, in the last 50 years, we have so much access to food that we keep eating all the time and for all the wrong reasons. Because we like the taste, because my mother is insisting, or I'm looking at a commercial. All of these are wrong reasons for eating. The only sufficient and necessary condition for us to eat is I'm hungry. If we follow that just one rule, observe yourself for 1 week by doing that. And then, all this gut microbiome and everything else will fall in its place. This is what I intuitively feel. I have not done as much study as Rashmi has done. She showed us so many things. All I'm saying is based on what I've done in my experiments. And in response to Nainatai's question just before this one, the rainbow diet. Look at my plates. All the colors of the rainbow, all fresh. Try those out. Thank you. Great job, Rashmi. It was a wonderful presentation. Thank you very
That's
much.
what I meant by I'm learning from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You are quite welcome.
Ravi, Neeru, do you have a question?
No.
No, Ravi and Neeru.
I think the
Thank you.
presentation was wonderful
Yes,
and
very
very
informative.
informative.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Rash.
you so much.
Thank you, Rashmi, very much. I think if there are no other questions, we can just end the meeting unless somebody has any question. Okay.
Yes.
Again, really nice, Rashmi, and
Thank you.
to know about you, and thank you.
Can I just ask
you.
one thing?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Can I just ask about the sprouted grains like mung beans and garbanzo beans and all
Yes.
kinds of the things that we sprout? They have to be eaten raw to get the advantage, or we can boil it and cook it and eat it.
The raw the sprouts have much more nutrition than the cooked form. They have much more fiber than the cooked form. So the most benefits we can get out of sprouts is by eating them raw. I mean, I know we tend to cook a lot of these sprouts. I do that myself. But the most optimal thing to do is to eat them raw.
Yeah.
But for older people, they are more difficult to digest if you
Yes,
eat
yes.
them raw.
Yes, so I mean the diet is specific for different age groups, but for people who can digest them, it's much beneficial to eat sprouts raw.
Also, the raw food tends to increase vata in many individuals. It's a more raw food diet is more vata prone diet.
Yes, so again, it really depends on how we have collected our microbiome, the history that we have, and our metabolism. So it depends on what suits us. I mean, there's no general blanket statement that is suitable for everyone.
Can I address that, Rashmi, please?
Yes.
Okay, great. So during our old age, we have the Vata predominance in our body. Okay, so during our old age, we should limit our raw food. If you want to steam it a little bit, you see, food has to be processed by the Agni principle. Okay, if our Jatharagni is not strong enough, then we have to provide some external Agni before we consume the food, which is quite important during our old age. Okay, also, even for healthy people, it is better not to eat sprouts in the evening because they are difficult to digest. What you have said is correct. Sprouts are difficult to digest and they will create gas only if we overeat them. So if we don't overeat them, if we are able to chew them and digest them properly, eating raw small quantities of sprouts is very good. If you cannot digest, then you steam it a little bit. Don't boil anything to death. Steam it a bit and then eat. That will be fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
so much. Thank you so much.
Very nice, Vikramji.
Yes, thank
As
you.
always.
You are most welcome. As I said, Rashmi is my younger sister. So I'm here to,
Yeah, I'm here
if
to
she is in
learn.
trouble, I'll save her.
So
And if I'm in trouble,
I'm
she'll
here
save
to
me.
learn.
So very nice to introduce Rashmi ji also.
Yeah.
We learned a lot.
Thank you
Yes.
so much.
Very
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Other aspect of the digestion. Yes,
Yes,
very
thank
good.
you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you,
Okay.
everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Shri.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye. Good night.
Good night.
So, Rashmi, I will have the recording and we'll put it on YouTube and share the.
Okay. Yes, thank you so much.
Do you
That
want
will
to
be
give
great. That
slides
will be
or,
great.
just the way it is, it's fine. What do you think?
Yes, I think it's fine.
Okay.
It's good. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.